Hello everyone, my name is Reuben. I am from Firo, a privacy-focused cryptocurrency, and it's a great honor and pleasure to be invited as part of the Ergo Privacy Summit. We've been big fans of Ergo's work, both being UTXO's base, proof of work base, and both of us having done research in the privacy space. So it's a real pleasure to be here. And today I'll be actually talking about kind of like a variety of privacy protocols because Ergo uses something called Zerojoin, and we were previously known as Zcoin, and we were the first cryptocurrency that implemented Zerocoin. And we want to kind of share you a bit about how the privacy protocols have evolved over the years, from Zerocoin, then Zerojoin, and how we have actually taken that to a different level of privacy with Lelantus Spark, which is Firo's recent development. So before we even go into that, it's worth asking, why do we need privacy in cryptocurrencies, right? And it's pretty simple. Unfortunately, nowadays, people often associate privacy cryptocurrencies with illicit activity or trying to hide. I mean, my personal view is that, it's about retaining the right to give consent to our own personal data, right? Without privacy, data is taken away from us without our consent, and privacy allows us to have control over that. Now, in particular, financial privacy is actually something that we expect from our financial institutions, right? From our bank accounts, our credit cards. When I pay someone with my credit card, I'm not handing him a credit card statement. Or I'm not necessarily, when I pay someone using my bank account, I'm not giving any information about how much I have, what my pay is, and all of that, right? Blockchain is kind of different because everything is public, right? If you don't have any sort of privacy mechanisms, every single transaction on the blockchain is basically exposed for everyone to see, and it's recorded permanently. Now, although your name may not be there, addresses, can be tied to identities, and they are very advanced, what we call chain analysis companies that can even, if you try to do mixes and stuff like that, they might be able to trace you if you're not careful. So I do think that, there's a real use case for privacy. When I'm paying for a cup of coffee, I don't want to review anything about myself. Or when I'm paying using, let's say, the company's treasury or the organization's treasury, I don't want people to know how much I pay my suppliers, or who my suppliers are, or, who my employees are, or how much I'm paying them. These are very, very basic, and I do think that, we have to view it as privacy is essential for cryptocurrencies to actually achieve proper adoption, mainstream adoption, beyond just being a speculative vehicle. Now, one of the things that we also have to remember is that beyond the practical needs of privacy in protecting our own financial privacy, we often forget the cypherpunk roots of cryptocurrencies, right? Like, why was Bitcoin created? And if you take a look at Bitcoin's Genesis block, there was this thing saying, chancellor on the brink of second bailout or bankruptcy. And I think it is pretty clear that when Satoshi embedded that information, he was making a statement, and the statement was, centrally controlled fiat currencies, where you're printing all this new money for bailouts, is a real problem, right? And the way Bitcoin could have been that answer to that. And Bitcoin was actually created originally to be uncensorable money controlled by no one entity. Obviously, that narrative has changed a bit. People are now talking about it as a store of value. Even privacy is not, very highly valued. And it's a bit unfortunate because we have to think about it that Satoshi wanted this thing, and even we actually, see in some of his writings, he actually did talk about potential privacy mechanisms for Bitcoin, which actually looks something like ring signatures and stuff like that, which we'll talk about later. And there's this quote that's actually very recent, and it comes from Congressman Davidson, and I think he was, commenting on the Canada situation, the Canada trucker situation, and yes, we may have differing views on vaccinations or masking and stuff like that, but whatever it is, the way the government acted, to me, that was clearly draconian. Whatever your views are on vaccinations and whatnot, freezing people's money, cutting them off from the financial system just because of, protests, is a kind of slippery slope. And what Congressman Davidson said, actually, we shouldn't use money as a way of controlling people. Okay. Of course, if there's criminal activity, you should go after that. But if you imagine if the same thing were done to a crowd-funded BLM movement, right? So there's a very fine line, right? Like criminal activity or like rightful protests. And if you allow governments or institutions to really like control money, basically they can control you, right? Like for example, if we look at China, right? There was this MMA fighter called Su Xiaodong, who basically, said some nasty things about a Tai Chi master. And this MMA fighter, he goes around challenging people to fight, especially traditional martial art, beats them up, a bit of an ass. But, what happened was because of that Tai Chi master's complaint, he got his social credit score demoted, which meant that he could not use fast trains, he could not fly, he could not get a loan, he could not get, he was cut off from parts of the financial system. And this is a way of using money and access to finances as a way of controlling people. And that to me is a kind of a dystopian future. So I really think that if we believe, cryptocurrency as an alternative, financial system, that's less under control, kind of like meeting the original ideas of what cryptocurrency was born for, we definitely need privacy beyond the practical needs as well. So one of the things that we actually need to get privacy on the blockchain, right? Remember, it's kind of like is a duality, right? Because on the one hand, everything is public and transparent, but you somehow need to protect privacy. And the main elements of on-chain privacy, that means blockchain privacy, what you need to hide is the sender, the receiver, and sometimes the amount that you're transferring, right? In some systems hide the amount, which we also talk about later. And there's also other types of metadata, which not necessarily, not just on the on-chain transaction, but for example, stuff like time of the transaction, that is hard to hide. Or the age of the UTXO, you can hide them in certain cases. Or the IP address of the node that originates the transactions. There are a couple of ways to hide that as well. But it means that not just what shows on the blockchain explorer, but all this other stuff need to be hidden as well. But for the purposes of this presentation today, we'll mainly be focusing on-chain privacy, okay? Because this is what Zerocoin or Zerojoin and Lelantus Spark is all about. We have other mechanisms to hide the metadata. Okay, so before we even talk about Zerocoin, I guess it helps to frame things to say that what were the first attempts at on-chain privacy. And basically, the first kind of on-chain privacy were Coinjoins, right? Basically, coin mixers, tumblers, and they're actually still in use today, especially on Bitcoin, for lack of better privacy mechanism. Like Wasabi Wallet, Samurai Wallet. They all currently use Coinjoin mechanisms. And a good way to kind of imagine Coinjoin is everyone takes their coins, throws it into a big pile, mixes it, and then takes coins back, right? What that means is that it is not clear, that means my coins are kind of mixed up with everyone's coins, and yes, I take back some coins, but it's not clear whose coin originally owned to who. So it kind of obfuscates the origin and basically the origin of these coins, because you'll be mixing in this group of people. There is some problems with Coinjoin, right? Because if you think about it, first of all, to do Coinjoins, you have to actively seek to mix. You have to be online for other people to communicate with you and to do that mix together, right? So that's a big drawback. Especially, if you want to get additional privacy, you probably want to do several rounds of mixes, and that means that you have to remain online for that whole period of time, right? So that's a big issue. There's also kind of minimum plausible deniability. Like, unlike some other systems, you have to basically like choose, I want to mix, right? And that means if anyone is coin joining, everyone has chosen to do mixing. That means everyone wants to hide something, and that actually makes it also easy for exchanges to just flag entire Coinjoin transactions, right? Because they're saying like, oh yeah, Coinjoin transactions are at risk. We're not going to accept Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies that go through mixers. And your anonymity set also kind of depends on the number of active participants. It also requires like a mixer intermediary, some server or whatnot where all this stuff happens, right? All the mixing. And I think one of the biggest problems for me is that even if you clean your coins through Coinjoin and do a lot of stuff, it is easy to make mistakes such as using change or mining or mixing UTXOs. And what that means is that, you mixed it all well, and then suddenly you mix it together with something that you haven't cleaned. So it kind of taints your clean coins as well. And it's very easy to make this mistake, right? And just very recently, a journalist claims, like Laura Shin, she actually identified, while using chain analysis, that some due to kind of flaws in the way that Wasabi mixes uses Coinjoin, the chain analysis was able to actually trace these funds. So I think Coinjoin is, I would say, good for casual privacy. But in many cases, if any kind of like someone who has the necessary tools, often can de-anonymize it, and it's just the limitation of the technology as well. So I think it's the good thing about Coinjoin is that yes, all these limitations, but the good thing about Coinjoin is that there's no need of any change in like consensus mechanisms, right? You can apply on any UTXO chain. You can even apply on Ergo, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin. As long as you're UTXO chain, Coinjoin can be implemented very easily, right? It doesn't use any sort of fancy cryptography. Supply remains auditable, right? So it's a very simple system. It's relatively efficient, but it's like several rounds of regular Bitcoin level transactions, right? But the privacy that affords isn't that great. So what was the kind of natural evolution for that? And that was like ring signatures, right? And how ring signatures work is that it works like a mixer, except that people don't have to actively mix with each other. And how it works is that when I am sending, let's say, a coin to someone else, I randomly take a bunch of other outputs to become my inputs as decoys, right? So when I am sending a transaction, let's say the ring size is of 11, it looks as if that there's this 11 potential sources of my funds, only one of them is real. And that's how ring signatures work. And the beauty of ring signatures is that, there's no active mixing. There's no need for a central server or mixer or anything like that. And it actually, especially when you apply it by default, such as Monero, it actually offers, quite a high degree of privacy. There's a reason why, although there are newer techniques, Monero, has been considered one of the premier privacy coins right now. So ring signatures can also be combined with what we call confidential transactions. So you can actually hide amounts, and that's what we call ring CT. So it's kind of one of the most popular privacy mechanisms out there, but it doesn't, it's not easy to kind of just apply on any chain. You require very drastic changes to actually apply it, and consensus breaking, you need a hard fork, all this type of things to implement it on your chain. It is not something like Coinjoins where you can just slap on. All right. Now, Ring CT is not perfect, although there are many Monero maximalists who would think otherwise. Actually, like the Monero core team and the researchers are very, very open about what are the limitations of Ring CT, right? So remember when I was talking about like when you are selecting your rings, right? Okay, just kind of think about it. Like I like to use this analogy because it's very easy to think. It's like, let's say if I want to kind of like fart in a lift, right? The Bitcoin transaction is like, I'm the only person in the lift, I fart in the lift, and yep, that is me. There's no other person. It has to be me. That's what a Bitcoin transaction is. A Ring CT or a Ring signature transaction is like I drag 10 other people into the lift with me. I let out a fart. Now there's this plausible deniability. Well, it could be any one of these 11 people inside, right? That's kind of like a crude but very easy way to kind of explain how ring signatures work. But picking the decoys, picking the people that pull into your lift with you can be quite tricky. And how to illustrate this is kind of like previously Monero actually kind of selected randomly across the entire blockchain, right? That means, from the beginning of Monero to now, you just randomly sample with a like kind of almost like an even random distribution. And that sounds fine, right? That means like if I'm having the decoys and I'm selecting randomly, why is that a problem? But there's been actually research to actually show that because human behavior is that we tend to move coins that are more recent, right? Coins that haven't moved in a long time generally don't move for a long time. So what happens is that when analysis was actually applied to it, they found that in those cases, the more recent UTXO, because you can see the age of the UTXO being selected, the most recent one tended to be the actual transaction. So you have all these decoys, but this one, everything else is so old. This one looks recent. That means like your decoys are just kind of eliminated out, and they actually achieve quite a very high degree of guessing what is the right input in that case. And that has been shifted. They switched the algorithm to kind of favor decoys to be in a more recent set. But it's an ongoing problem. It is probably the weakest part of the ring signature model, right? There are also other kind of like limitations, because repeated payments to someone, like for an exchange or a merchant, can actually identify common origins. Because yes, you have a lot of decoys and whatnot, but if I am paying exchange multiple times, there's only, if I got these funds from, let's say, a common source, let's say from an exchange, if you go and look through the taint tree, you would actually be able to say like, whoa, look, these payments have a common source, have a common there's a common input, and therefore it is likely that this is the real transaction, right? It helps to eliminate. And this illustration that kind of shows this case. So the privacy doesn't really hold up when there are multiple payments to the same merchant or exchange or whatnot, and that's actually quite a normal use case, right? So that's quite risky as well. Also, because there's kind of limited anonymity set per transaction, right? Because like every time I do it, I'm dragging 10 people in. That means like for that particular transaction, your plausible deniability is basically 11 or something like that, right? So yeah, it's you can kind of having it by default. As a general, if you take a look at the blockchain as a whole, yes, the anon set is larger, but on the transaction basis, it is quite low. And if you can find ways to kind of narrow down and by the process of elimination, remove certain decoys, the privacy guarantees of Ring CT can be reduced. So in comes Zerocoin, right, which was kind of I think it was like back in maybe 2014 this paper was released. It was one of the first applications of a new type of privacy mechanism that instead of finding decoys and stuff, they use types of zero knowledge proofs to kind of provide its privacy. And the way Zerocoin actually works is quite simple. You take a coin, you burn it into this like general pool, right? And then anytime in the future, I can redeem them for brand new coins with no previous transaction history. So that means whenever I redeem a coin from this pool, my anonymity set is with everyone that had previously burned into the pool. So that means, like, for example, like in the lift example, right? My anonymity set is not just the people in the lift right now with me, but it means that anyone who ever went into the lift. So that anonymity set is a lot larger, right? Burn and redeem and stuff like that. So it was quite a smart protocol. It was actually a proposal for Bitcoin. But yeah, because it wasn't perfect. There were actually quite a lot of drawbacks. For example, very large proof sizes. It was like 50 kilobytes per transaction, then reduced to 25 kilobytes. It required a trusted setup, and it still required the use of fixed denominations, right? When I burn 10, I have to redeem 10. I cannot burn 10 and redeem 5, right? And because fixed denominations is also a real problem, because when you are doing stuff in fixed denominations, your anonymity set is not with everyone who burned, but it's kind of like everyone who burned 10 coins. It's a difference, right? So and why do you need fixed denominations? Because when you don't hide amounts, if I do this burn and redeem without fixed denominations, like for example, if I burn 10.567 coins, and then when I redeem 10.567 coins, there's no other person that burn this exact same amount because it's so specific, and therefore you have to force people into fixed denominations. So maybe like 10 or 1 and 0.1, and break down your transactions into fixed denominations, which is also what Ergo Zerojoin actually does as well. And what that means is that Zerocoin proofs are already very big, right? 25 kilobytes. For each of those denominations, you're breaking it down, is an additional proof that you need to do. So it can be quite inefficient, right? Sigma is a kind of like a modification to Zerocoin. It actually replaces the RSA accumulator with a new type of proof called one out of many proofs. And what it does is that it removes trusted setup, and it brings down proof sizes to about 2 kilobytes. So a lot more practical, but it works really the same. And we can just take a look. This is like a sample, Sigma transaction. As you can see, these are 500, this person is spending 500 Z coin, as we then was, from 5 different sources, right? And all of these are not known. They all come from the 100 denomination box. And you can see that the change is being reminted, but the output, the actual transaction of 450 something is exposed, but the source is unknown, right? You don't know where it's come from. You don't know exactly what was the source of that transaction. So that's how privacy was provided. But here, you still kind of have supply auditability, right? Because like all the amounts are exposed, right? So it does retain some of that. So obviously, I did mention some of the limitations of Zerocoin and Sigma, and basically because it doesn't hide amounts, you're forced to use fixed denominations, and fixed denominations are a really big problem for privacy. Zerocoin also relied on the trusted setup. Sigma doesn't, but this was also another drawback that actually was mentioned in the Zerojoin paper, is that the Zerocoin, because with every sort of burn and redeem, so a burn is a commitment, right? And when you spend, you put the serial up to prevent that coin being spent again. So this information needs to be kept somewhere. And basically whenever you want to do like a new transaction of it, you have to somehow reference this previous burns and spends when you are calculating your zero knowledge proof, or when you're calculating your private transaction. Of course, in my personal opinion, this isn't really a big problem, especially for most chains which aren't seeing like hundreds of millions of transactions. That isn't an issue. Like for example, if you have 1 million or 2 million transactions, that commitment is maybe like 30 to 40 megabytes. It doesn't really occupy a lot of memory. Of course, if you start achieving levels like 500 million, 600 million, it may be a bigger problem, but there are many tricks to reduce memory to verify, such as like hash tables and stuff like that. So it is a drawback. There are some mitigations, but yeah, this was actually like a mentioned benefit of Zerojoin. So let's take a look at Zerojoin, which was created by Ergo. It's a very clever way of combining both the ideas of Zerocoin and Coinjoin. And the main idea was trying to kind of mix the privacy benefits of Coinjoin without having to remove the need for interactivity. And at the same time, not having this set of commitments that you have to constantly maintain and is always growing. So it's kind of like providing some privacy, but not taking a big hit on performance, right? So Zerojoin, basically the idea is that, instead of Zerocoin where you are, everyone's going into one lift, instead, in this case with Zerojoin, you basically go in the lift, pulling one person in, farting, then coming out, then pulling another person in. So it's almost like you kind of mix, your pool is of one person, right? And to get more privacy, because when you just go in and go out with two people, your plausible deniability is only 50%, right? But if you repeat that many times, then your plausible deniability grows a lot more. So this, you have to do Zerojoins several rounds to get a good level of privacy, right? So all this again, retains a lot of the benefits. It's kind of like an in-between between Coinjoin and Zerocoin, where yes, there is some cryptography to enable this, but it retains supply auditability. No amounts are hidden, so if there's any sort of inflation bug, it's a lot easier to take a look at. It is pretty efficient in memory and size, so it's a trade-off, right? But in my opinion, Zerojoin, if you really want high levels of privacy, there are many limitations. Again, the use of fixed denominations, as I mentioned, right? You require several rounds of mixing for good privacy. So, that kind of negates a bit of the space savings, but of course not entirely. But because if you have to do several transactions, several rounds of it, each of that is just like, more transactions on the blockchain. Now, one of the biggest issues with the way this Zerojoin works is that because you have to opt in to choose that I want to participate in this Zerojoin mixing mechanism. Now, if everyone was honest, that would be fine. But if I was an active adversary that kind of wants to really de-anonymize you, I can put large amounts of Ergo in and say that it's available for mixing. And because if you are using my if you are pairing up with me, if you're dragging me into the lift with me, I know that you are this other person, right? I know which one was mine and which one is you. Now, if I control enough people, right, it's like almost like you grabbing random people to grab into the lift with you. But if all the people that you're picking from has been like, are spies of me, then you don't really get a good privacy. So this isn't like an active adversary that has to, spend resources to, seed all of this in. But it is a potential issue. I mean, we've also seen similar kind of attacks with Monero called Flood XMR and stuff like that. So that, users still need to opt in to mix. So while it is not interactive, there's still reduced plausible deniability, because like I am opting in to use this mechanism to make myself available to mix. So it does suffer some of the issues that still plagues Coinjoin. And again, all this fixed denomination stuff, it is not easy to deal with. And actually Zerojoin has to do a lot of tricks to try and hide it. And maybe in actual use cases, people might make mistakes. So I think it's a very clever mechanism. It's a good kind of balance between privacy and performance, but it doesn't offer like the highest levels of privacy. So we're finally moving to Lelantus, which was our Firo's creation, where we were looking at this problem of fixed denominations, and we're looking how can we improve this privacy protocol further. And basically we found a way to partially hide amounts, not require fixed denominations. That means now I can burn 10.762 coins, and then I can redeem 5.2 coins partially. So that means now I don't actually have to reveal the amount that I'm coming from, nor the change amount. And you can see from this particular transaction, the source is hidden, the change amount is hidden, and yes, you see this person just received 500 Firo, but from where, we don't know, right? Now this removes a bit of supply auditability, meaning that if there's any sort of like flaw in the cryptography or implementation, inflation can be harder to detect. But it's a trade-off, right? You either hide amounts and get really good privacy, or you don't hide amounts and you have to deal with stuff like fixed denominations that leak a lot of data. Now, on top of that, we actually even brought it even further with Lelantus Spark. And it's a massive extension of Sigma, Zerocoin, and Lelantus. And what it does is that it really builds everything out. We have now full self-addressing support. That means like receivers are now protected, right? Like, with the previous example, you could still see this particular address, receiving 500 Firo. With Spark, all amounts are hidden. Everything is hidden. So if you take a look at the previous example, all of this, everything will be hidden, right? And similarly, the address that I am sharing with you can be safely reused. Like usually how in Bitcoin or many UTXO bases, like, use a new address to receive payments every time, and that's actually kind of cumbersome. While Spark addresses kind of work like email addresses, where I can give it to you, you can send to me, but other people cannot see when I receive stuff or when stuff comes in or what goes into it. That address that I give to you cannot be searched on the blockchain. So that's a very powerful privacy mechanism. Full hidden amounts, we're using actually like improved versions or bulletproofs. And the anonymity set, that lift, right, is not just, a couple of people, 10 people or 2 people. It's like 65,000, right? The performance benefits can actually like support very, very large pools of 65,000. So that's like, several magnitudes larger than even like what Ring CT can achieve. So yes, while serial numbers that you still need to keep do increase monotonically, because we are doing pools of 65,000 with some overlap in between them, so that when you start a new pool, you're not starting from zero, right? You still want to have some people within it. So we precede it with 16,000 from the previous pool. That's what we call sliding windows. And what it means is that when I'm spending, I just need to reference that 65,000 pool. I don't have to reference the entire set. And pools of 65,000 are really, really small. It barely occupies any space in the memory, right? So we're really excited about Spark. That's already been audited. The cryptography has been audited, and we're already in the midst of implementing it. And we feel that it's a good balance between trustlessness, high privacy, and performance. Obviously, the cryptography is a lot more complex, and in terms, because I know Ergo has a more conservative approach. They want to make sure that they're moving slowly and stably. But as a privacy coin that we are trying to really provide the ultimate levels of privacy, we are willing to make that trade-off as well. But it is really a good balance between trustlessness, high privacy, and performance. And if you take a look in complexity, it is definitely not in any way as complex as something like ZK Snarks or Halo or anything like that. So any cryptographer that actually kind of reads this would be able to get it within a couple of hours of reading it, as opposed to something like all these zero knowledge circuits, which are a lot more moving parts and therefore a lot more things that can go wrong. Okay. I just want to quickly touch about that. We actually recently managed to actually find a way that Spark is flexible enough to extend it to high asset types. And this may be also something interesting for Ergo, right? As a more like versatile platform, not just a privacy coin, right? I don't think that's their main focus. But basically, we have managed to extend Spark so that let's say we have this tokenization layer, right? I can now hide the asset that I'm actually transferring. So a USDT transfer or DAI transfer or Sigma USD transfer all look the same on chain. It just looks like a transaction has happened on this asset layer, right? And that's really cool. Like that means that any usage of any transfer of any asset on that chain increase the anonymity set of all other assets on this private chain. So this is what Firo has been working on, to have this Elysium tokenization layer where tokens can be built or bridged over and enjoy all the privacy that Firo has. The paper is going to be released soon. We can see a little preview over that. I hope to release it sometime next week. So we're really excited. So the main takeaways that I kind of want to take from this talk is that there's actually no perfect privacy protocol, right? There's always balancing of trade-offs. Are you okay with trusted setup? Are you okay with very complex math, which means more things that can go wrong? Are you okay to give up supply auditability, right? What's the performance characteristics? So obviously stuff like Zerojoin is more on the more conservative side, but as you can see, it probably would not stand up to very detailed blockchain analysis, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong, but it does offer much better privacy than nothing at all, and it is still pretty performant as well. So obviously something like our Lelantus Spark has more, slightly larger transactions. There are more in needs that, it's less lightweight compared to something like Zerojoin or even Coinjoin, but it improves privacy by several magnitudes as well. So it's all about picking the right privacy protocol for your use case and threat level. And I thought it was interesting to show you guys how the privacy protocol has evolved from, Zerocoin or Coinjoin to Zerojoin and to Lelantus and Lelantus Spark. So I hope this kind of gives a good overview of the scene of this family of privacy protocols. And thank you very much. You can visit us at our website at firo.org. Again, we are big fans of Ergo. We hope to find ways that we can work with each other, and happy to answer any questions. And yeah, thanks guys.